Hi guys, this is Raghav from Headphone Zone. So today's video is going to be a little different. I have with me a brand new box of the Sennheiser HD6XX open back headphones. These are usually sold through drop.com and they have a cult following around the world because they're modeled after the very, very famous Sennheiser HD600 series. But these aren't any ordinary box of Sennheiser HD6XX. This is very, very special because these were made by me at the Sennheiser Factory in Tullamore, Ireland. All right, so let's talk about this. I had the chance to travel to Ireland after a really, really long flight where I was joined by a whole bunch of reviewers and YouTubers from different parts of Asia. We had people from Japan, South Korea, Singapore, Hong Kong, and all of us were invited to spend the day at Sennheiser's factory to get a deep dive into the inner workings of this factory where every single audiophile headphone and IEM from Sennheiser is today manufactured. I think for a lot of us, it was the first time in Ireland, and so of course it was an absolutely beautiful countryside that we got to experience on our way to the factory and got to meet some amazing people while we were there. So back in the year 2022, Sennheiser decided that they wanted to take all the manufacturing activities and put them under one roof for their most popular high-end headphones. The Sennheiser HD600 series, the Sennheiser HD800 series, even the IE600s and the IE900 IEMs. Now, when I say that, it's very important that you understand that this factory doesn't just assemble the headphone itself, it also makes the drivers that go inside the headphone, which is very, very rare. I don't think there are any other factories that are very easily known in the industry, which not just make the headphone drivers, but also assemble the entire headphone. So this is something that Sennheiser is particularly proud of because it allows them to make sure that the synergy between the entire headphone's casing as well as the driver works beautifully together and that it sounds amazing. If I have to really think hard, the only other company that I know makes its own drivers and headphones under the same roof is Odyssey in California. And Odyssey, of course, is famous for this, but to see it in action at Sennheiser's factory also, I think, is an amazing experience. So there were a couple of things that I learned, which I think really changed my perspective on how I think about headphones being made in general. The entire process of making the drivers was a completely eye-opening experience for me. This is done on a moving conveyor belt, literally a factory line, without any humans actually picking up or touching any of the drivers at any stage. The entire line is completely automated. And to see a driver come together from its bare raw shell ingredients was an amazing experience. And we had the plant manager, a gentleman by the name Pat Fulton, who very proudly showed us through the entire process. And of course, we weren't allowed to photograph the details because this would have a lot of sensitive information that would be there. But we had access to basically see everything out there and ask as many questions as we wanted about the manufacturing process. So I want to sincerely thank Sennheiser for that opportunity because it certainly was amazing to watch. The thing that was most impressive about this was how after every station where some components came together, there was always a quality control check and test done. So every time two components came together, they were tested along the way. So what you find at the end of this conveyor belt is a fully functioning driver that has also been thoroughly tested multiple times along the way. So you're very, very confident of getting something that sounds absolutely up to spec without exception. And it's clear that Sennheiser has some very, very high standards that they have set for themselves in these drivers because you had screens and dashboards all over the factory that were basically monitoring what was the percentage of units that failed the quality control check. Now, the other part which was very, very interesting for me to watch and experience myself was that certain parts of the headphone and certain headphones themselves have to be made by hand, only and only because of the complexity and the detail which is involved in making these headphones. And it's no surprise that the entire Sennheiser HD800S, the Sennheiser HD820, which are two of their flagships, as well as the Sennheiser HD600 series and the IE600 and IE900 were entirely made by hand. And it was amazing to watch that, because it became very, very clear to me that the expertise that was involved in making these headphones wasn't in the design itself or in the components themselves. It was the way that the people were making them. They really knew these headphones in and out, and almost out of instinct and muscle memory, they were able to put these headphones together. So to watch them in an action was quite literally poetry in motion. Here's another very interesting thing that we got to see. The absolutely flagship Sennheiser HE1 electrostatic headphones are also entirely manufactured at the Tullamore factory in Ireland. And it was amazing to know that it's basically made by one guy. His name is Damien, and he makes every single Sennheiser HE1 from scratch. So they have a completely cordoned off section, which I assume is climate controlled, where the HE1 is assembled by Damien. And it typically takes him at least 2 weeks to put together just one HE1 headphone. And it's amazing to see the number of parts that need to come together for this fully finished HE1 to happen and be a complete unit out there. And it was amazing to watch that happen right in front of us. Sennheiser also had us listen to and experience the HE1 by ourselves. So of course, they had a completely separate audiophile experience center out there with the factory where the HE1 was set up, and we had the chance to listen to it with some vinyls and CDs playing. And I've heard the HE1 before, but to be able to listen to it right there, standing next to the people that made the HE1, was an experience by itself, and one that I'm going to cherish for a long time. I'm not going to talk about how it sounds. Suffice to say, it sounds very, very good. So one of my favorite parts of spending the entire day at Sennheiser's factory in Tullamore was really interacting with the team members of Sennheiser who work at the factory. We spent an entire day, so we were walking around with them, seeing them do their work. We ate lunch with them. And it was all of these things that really helped me understand something that I'd probably never thought about. And it's really the passion with which these guys make these products. They're not just passionate about their work, but they're also passionate about the products that they make. And you can clearly see that. There were people who've been working in the factory for the past 18 years who probably knew the insides of every headphone at the back of their hand. And to see them have such wonderful memories and ideas about the products that you and I have only heard, but seeing them talk about it from the behind the scenes perspective of making these headphones, I think was probably the most fulfilling part of the job. I also had the chance to spend some time along with the plant director of Sennheiser's factory in Tullamore, Mr. Pat Fulton. And I had the chance to ask him a whole bunch of very, very interesting questions. But the thing that I think resonated with me the most is the question that I asked him: why Tullamore? Why was it that this particular small town in the middle of Ireland was chosen as the location to make some of the world's finest headphones? And I was very surprised when he told me it was mostly because of the people, the skill set and the passion that people have for making high quality products in a place like Tullamore was probably the single most important ingredient that led to the success of the factory right here. And the fact that they've got all the operations of the factory running like a well-oiled machine is testament to the fact that they've chose the absolute best place around the world to be able to do this. And it's amazing in today's day and age where you see brands moving manufacturing operations to the cheapest place that they can find on the map, that Sennheiser has chosen to make some of the world's greatest headphones in this town of Tullamore, where they continue to do the great work that they have. So before we left, the last thing that I got to do was make this headphone. The Sennheiser HD6XX was currently in the production line. They're making a large batch of these headphones, and they invited me to join the group to be able to manufacture these headphones from scratch and to be able to finish the assembled product and packet for it to be shipped out. And it was a privilege of a lifetime. I truly understood that this is not a very easy product to finish by hand. You had so many different parts that had to come together, starting with the driver units themselves. You had to handle these very, very carefully. They go inside this particular casing, and then the headband comes on, the ear pad comes on, then we put in the cables, and then most importantly, this is the part that really surprised me. Every single headphone that was being assembled, including these that I put on together myself, was a headphone that needed to be tested for its entire frequency spectrum inside a testing chamber. So you'd find that every single headphone is played to its limits, heard on some very, very advanced sensors, so that ultimately what you hear when you open the box is a very consistent listening experience. We had all of these stations where we had to go through, where these headphones came together one after the other, and it was finally tested before it was packed into the box that I made myself, and then finally let it off ready to ship. And I'm very, very grateful that Sennheiser let me carry this one particular headphone that I made by myself with me back home. And I'm probably going to cherish this one for the rest of my life. So what did I really learn from this entire trip to Ireland? Well, a lot of things. But for me, the biggest takeaway was that it changed my perspective on headphones and changed the way I look at a lot of things as a human being. It's very easy for us who talk about headphones every day, compare one to another, to simply judge a headphone by its sound signature, its performance, its sonic properties, a whole bunch of things that we look at and judge it based on just how it's doing. And that's fine. There's nothing wrong in that, because it's a part of our jobs to be able to help people choose headphones. But each headphone is also the end result of some human being's hard work, who's put in days, weeks, and months worth of work to create this beautiful product. So every time we pick up a headphone and say, nah, it doesn't quite sound right here, or it's not perfect in that particular aspect, I think I'm going to think twice. When I did it myself, making these headphones from scratch alongside people who create hundreds of headphones every day, and you realize everything that goes into making one great headphone. And I sincerely want to thank the team from Sennheiser for allowing us into their factory, giving us access to everything that they have doing on there, and finally experiencing what it's like to put together some of the world's finest headphones together by hand for ourselves. Thank you so much.